Moves forward when artists bring new perspectives, concepts, and techniques into productions. To help your production keep up with the most talented artists in our industry, we focused on performance and quality of life improvements in Harmony 25 and Storyboard Pro 25. Improvements to project file sizes mean projects open 3 times faster, playback twice as smoothly, and transfer faster across networks. With the ability to save as a single file, collaboration with your crew is simpler than ever. Artists can adjust opacity and thickness with the pencil line retouch tool. Capture the look and feel of traditional media without compromising adjustability across the ink and paint process. The brand new Breakdown Assistant helps animators set breakdowns between keyframes and adjust which keyframe is favored with fewer clicks. Artists can now import Photoshop brushes directly into Storyboard Pro in Harmony. By keeping brushes consistent, your concept art will better match the final shot. Want to thumbnail your boards without distractions? The quick thumbnailing workflow in Storyboard Pro allows artists to draw thumbs in a grid or transfer your paper thumbnails easily onto the timeline. Need your storyboards and animatics to look more cinematic? The updated effects stacked view brings non-destructive filters to Storyboard Pro. And with quality of life improvements like lockable scene markers or click and drag layer toggling, every part of the process becomes more responsive. Built to give artists like you the best canvas possible. Harmony 25 and Storyboard Pro 25 now available at toonboom.com.
Hello, artists and animators. We often receive advice for animation students, but what do animation instructors learn from their experience in classrooms as well as in studio? Today, we are interviewing 4 artists to learn how teaching shapes their professional practices and also how working on productions influences what they bring back to the classroom. Greg, Sonia, Tony, and Jason, welcome to the live stream.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It's very good to have you. So starting with Sonia, what was your path to working in the industry and becoming an instructor?
Hi, everybody. It's definitely a full circle moment. So I did start with I got a Bachelor of Arts when I was, quite young, and I just finished university. I wasn't sure that I'd ever look at that again. And after years of teaching in animation studios and doing a lot of recruiting and also on the floor training, which allowed me to hire more juniors than seniors, because at the time we were all competing for a lot of the same senior staff. So I started this training in studio while I was running a production, and definitely Toon Boom centric training. So I opened up, I just, because I love teaching and I love giving back to the industry, I did open up a little animation lounge called the Animation Lounge, which was meant to just be a cool hangout. We would make a 1-day film with a workshop where I would teach, animation and pipeline techniques, and we would just really have coffee or a glass of wine while we were doing it, depending on your age. And that Animation Lounge portal opened up an opportunity for me to be seen by a college in California that was looking for somebody who could teach Toon Boom very well, from the database on up, and also understood producing and production, and could also qualify for a work visa, which is where the BA came in handy, which I was like, again, thanks to my mom and dad for forcing me to get that. And so 2 years ago, I was found by the college, and I do teach as a professor at a college in California. So that was my path.
Yeah. So when you started teaching the software, I'm guessing there was a time where there were a lot of like the top talent would be more in traditional animation. What was it like teaching people who are more used to like pen and paper, pencil and paper than software?
Definitely. Yeah, I'm at that age where we were, I worked on paper for a very long time, and but I was always more on the technical side in the studio. So although we were, for example, The Princess and the Frog, although it was all done on paper, we would scan it all. So Toon Boom was a big part of that production, and take it through to digital ink and paint compositing. But I was working with people who were on, they were just used to pencil and paper as well on that film. So that was like deep, intensive training and convincing, and getting like people used to the feel of, treating the software like paper. I find introducing paper terminology still, like when I'm saying add a node, I say add a new piece of paper, and they get it, And when I say flipping with the buttons, I'm like, use your fingers like, like we used to flip paper. And it really helps. And setting up pen pressure, pencil pressure, having it have a little bit of grain to it. So those things it was intense. It's not the easiest connection from, people who are really bound to paper and traditional means. But using Toon Boom and introducing paper terminology, I still do that in the classroom too, where I do, say add a new piece of paper. You can't draw without a blank piece of paper, and then you have to keep an eye on that piece of paper. So that's my technique, just tricking them with terminology.
Jason, what was your path to working in the industry and becoming an instructor?
Wow. So yeah, after graduating from Sheridan years ago, I graduated during a time where Flash was basically starting to boom. And so first gig was obviously hand drawn, but then I transitioned over, and when I was transitioning over, that's where everything really started like going for me. I ended up catching on and understanding how to use the tech better than most, and they end up just by default making me the trainer for all the newcomers that are coming in that we onboarded. And from that, when Toon Boom started gaining traction, I transitioned over to learning Toon Boom Harmony, and before it was called Harmony, it was just basically just Toon Boom. Everyone just knew it as Toon Boom or Digital Pro. And yeah, that just sparked into me teaching many others. And during that transitional time of like teaching people and people getting jobs and everything, a couple of guys I've trained became professors and instructors over at Seneca and Sheridan here in Ontario, two major colleges that teach animation. And one of them came up to me and said, "Hey, like since you're so good at training people, would you mind taking teaching over at Sheridan? And I said, sure, why not? Like I've trained people for at that time about 10, 12 years. And yeah, so like teaching just came natural, and yeah, just started teaching since. So teach both at Sheridan and Seneca part-time in animation.
Yeah. As someone who was instructor at that point in time, like when digital tools were first entering the scene, did you feel that like it was challenging to sort of establish like what the sort of conventions and rules would be for uh, working with digital tools? Because I imagine that like not everybody was using rigs at the same way at the same time.
So that's always the biggest challenge, right? Trying to get everyone to use it the same way in the most conventional ways, right? Everyone has their own conventions of working and doing things. Some will break the system and others will run perfectly fine, right? So it's always really challenging to try to get everyone to understand to work in a particular way so that it makes sense and doesn't break the system. But however, like what I do find neat is people come up with the most creative ways of rigging or compositing, where you think, oh, I would not have thought of that because that usually breaks the computer. But you found a way to make it work, and that's always neat because I love working with juniors and people who are fresh into using Harmony, because they just come up with some of the most unique ways of doing things, right? Whereas someone who's very experienced, like myself, over the years, like I'll only use it the ways I know how to use it, which won't break the system. But then I would never actively try to, because again, just knowing how bad it can go and how much it slows your system down. But then seeing a student come up with something unique and like, you did what now? Right? And that blows, and I love it because like I learned so much from that. I'm like, oh wow, you can actually do it.
You go, you can't do that, and then they show you, no, you absolutely can do that.
Tony, what was your path to working in the industry and becoming an instructor?
I started in Atlanta actually, and I worked at a studio that was not, animation was not a part of what we did. It was very much, corporate, this, that, and the other. And these little opportunities would come up, and my boss would be like, hey, Grillo can draw, why don't we get him in there? So we would just figure things out. We'd figure there was an early tool called Animation Stand. It preceded Flash by like a few years, and they were out of San Diego as well. So I always wondered, because remember the roots of Flash was in some company in San Diego, but it was very similar in its like what it could do, but the interface was not. So I would sort of like send them emails. I'd be like, or, well, not emails at the time, but faxes probably, and be this is a really cool way you could do this and use a timeline. So once Flash came out, and it was obviously very revolutionary, and I moved out to LA and started a company out there, but not many people knew how to use it. We were getting all this demand for work on the web because everybody wanted to jump into entertainment on the web. So I started a Flinch Studio, and anyone that came in, we were like, let's, as long as they can animate or draw, we'll train them. And so training became just a big part of what we did. And then I started doing instruction for Santa Monica College and kind of cherry picking students out of there. And just, it was always about training. Training was always such a big part of what we did. And to Jason's point, like coming up with the perfect system for creating a rig and everything. So, this was, we were working with sometimes people. I had started working on a film. It was the first Flash feature. And they didn't have a system. They were using Flash, but they weren't using it to its fullest. So it was, hey, we're going to be working 60-hour weeks. Is that okay? And I'm sitting there going, what if we, made a better system? We didn't have to work 60-hour weeks. So I had to kind of like in my free time, I would build a rig based on the things we had learned already. And then I said, like, look, this is how we can do that. Oh, wow, it's great, And it kind of became, some of the things that we did became the norm in Flash production. Of course, new tools kept coming out, plugins that would, displace the need for a lot of these things. But that experience with rigs really, I think, made it easy to transition into Toon Boom. Years later, when I first started working with Toon Boom. Yeah, it was steep learning curve at first, right? And then, you know, if you don't use it every day, it's like language. If you don't use it every day, you got to start almost from the beginning in a few months. So this is one of those things I'm always telling my students: just don't, you know, when class is done, don't go home and start gaming. Like, spend some time animating, right? But it made it a lot easier for me to dive right into rigging in Toon Boom, because it was just so, it needed they needed rigs. People that were using Toon Boom also didn't understand the advantages of rigs, so we start playing with that. Did some work with Tim Burton and Adam Sandler back in the early days, and we were working with Dan Harmon on a Flash project. I'm sorry, a Toon Boom project. And then I started, I think Toon Boom reached out to me and asked me, hey, you want to do some online classes? So I started teaching some online Toon Boom. Like, I never in the classroom until like 2020, I did not teach in person. And then in 2020, COVID happened. Toon Boom had a contract with the Sardinia in Italy to train, like a really enhanced training, like a 3-month program where they were like covering all the bases, something that we would not normally do, right, in a typical online session, because they were trying to develop an industry there. But because of COVID, Canadian companies were not sending people overseas, right? It was very locked down. I just happened to be living in Europe, so they sent me down to Italy, and it was fantastic. I learned a lot more about Toon Boom. I thought I knew a lot about Toon Boom until I went down there, and I actually like, whoa, you know, I'm starting to learn a lot more about rigging and all these different things that are possible. But also about teaching. I mean, I learned a lot about what people are, you know, and of different age groups and of different, you know, levels of either technical or drawing expertise, and how to sort of, okay, we got to work with them, kind of get them on the same page, but you know, and then yeah, after that, I got a call from Pixel Blue College out in Edmonton in Alberta, and I've been teaching for them mostly online, but I'll head over to Canada a couple of times a year, spend some time with the students there, and it's been amazing. Like, I love working on projects and everything, but teaching has become like almost an addiction. Like, I love watching the light bulbs fire and seeing people get better over the course of a very short period of time sometimes.
That's really cool. Greg, what was your path to working in the industry and becoming an instructor?
Yeah, path to the industry. I got my undergrad degree, my bachelor's in illustration, and kind of that launched me on a short little career in, at the time, was, we called it digital media production. It was kind of like using computers to kind of make whatever was needed, like living books, or like, I mean, I don't know. It was like commercial. It was really kind of piecemeal, the kind of stuff. But the common thread was we were using computers to do stuff that normally we would, you know, like cameras before, whatever. So I kind of rode a little wave of like that and software development and video gaming. And then in 2000 or 2001, the fabled internet bubble burst, right? And I was like, well, maybe this is a good time for me to like pivot to something else. So I moved to LA. I got my master's degree in animation and digital arts and filmmaking. And then that, and being in LA, I was kind of emboldened to take some tests at studios. Cartoon Network was the first one I took a test at, and that kind of got me in. And that started like a 10-year, 13-year run of just working in the LA TV animation industry using, you know, like Tony mentioned, Flash at the time. And then around 2014, I just had a opportunity, an offer to teach, and I had the credentials of industry experience and a master's degree, so it was kind of a no-brainer. And I thought, well, I'll try this for a little while. And I was a TA in grad school, and I enjoyed it. I taught some summer sessions to high school students, and I enjoyed it. And I thought maybe give teaching a try, and it ended up being like one of the most rewarding experiences I've had in my career, to be honest. And it's just like Tony said, it's addictive. It's just to be part of something larger, and to see like the light bulbs go off, and to know that you're like leveling somebody else up as well as yourself, is a really gratifying experience. And so, yeah, teaching is it's just super fun too. So that's my story.
All right, let's get into it. Greg, how would you describe the kinds of classes that you teach?
It's not up to me, you know, your assigned classes, right? But I've gotten a pretty good mix of like, to break it down, practice and theory, right? So there's like components of visual design or something, storytelling or concept development. But then there's also like the really technical, like I was the guy that was doing like the harmony rigging classes and the 2D production classes where you have like, you know, one quarter to make a film from beginning to end, a short piece from beginning to end using a suite of software tools, and we were using Harmony and Storyboard Pro to do that stuff. But between the two, like my take on it was like, you know, drawing from industry experience and like fusing that into teaching was like, if I'm teaching a practical class, I should definitely have theory in mind. And if I'm teaching a theory class, it's with, you know, how are we going to put this into practice? So you kind of have to balance both the theory and the practice. I think that's beneficial to students to kind of have the bird's eye view over that stuff. And then really the other thing is just like the needs of what the syllabus demands and trying to keep it fresh and trying to stay, you know, knowing how the tools are used in production and not just from like a dry, this is the instruction book telling you what to do. And another benefit of like coming from working on productions is knowing how they're used in practice, like in real life, and saying like, this is on this show we did it this way, on this show we did it this way. And like whenever you're going to set up, you know, files or whatever, be crew friendly and like all this, you know, file hygiene and all that other stuff that are like maybe you're not going to pick up from a tutorial or from a book, but that like somebody who's has had the job that you aspire to have as a student can kind of give you the lay of the land, you know, as well as the map, right? So just being aware of all that stuff, I think just making sure that you're providing value to the students and serving them by drawing on your own experience in the classroom, in addition to like all of the stuff on the syllabus. So that's kind of like my approach to the classes. The classes are generally, like I said, production based, but in the end, it's really the tools are the tools, and it's the stuff that's consistent is what's your approach and how do you apply the fundamentals, and make sure to infuse that in what I'm doing as well.
That's a very good point. Sonia, how would you describe the kinds of classes that you teach?
I'm definitely Toon Boom focused, although I'm teaching design, filmmaking, animation, storyboarding, but all of it, the foundation is using Toon Boom as the tool. It was very important to me to stick to teaching what I know. I think there's a lot of instance of maybe people teaching what they don't know because you feel like you should say yes to these things. But I like to teach what I know. So I'm focusing on fundamentals as far as, you know, animation, drawing, and using Toon Boom as a tool while they learn those fundamentals. I'm focused on juniors and sophomores so that I can build a really strong foundation to remove the tool as an obstacle as they move on to their more senior years. I also learned that, you know, the path to mastery is when the tool is no longer your issue, you can really focus on the craft. And so Toon Boom as a tool inside of a studio is very powerful, even though, you know, we try to stick to certain other, you know, you might have other software that you really love. If we can all work inside of one package, so even designers, because we do kind of bridge a gap between design and animation, they do come together at some point. Like, why not start in Toon Boom and end in Toon Boom while you're going from design or concept out to animation and compositing? So definitely staying in my lane. If I do go outside of my lane, I bring in guest speakers and people who really understand, and I take that class with my students so that they can see that, you know, I want to learn with them. And then also just kind of teaching them how to bridge the gap between 2D and 3D. Just because I'm focusing on Toon Boom and 2D products, it doesn't mean that we should separate those two things. They do go very nicely together, especially in this day and age, to become a more well-rounded person, instead of just saying, oh, I only do this thing or I only do this thing. This opens up many opportunities to bridge the gap and be, you know, hired for longer periods of time, and also use 2D as a foundation for 3D, which we're doing, which I really love to do. A lot of films I've worked on have been fully drawn out in 2D, even though they were 3D films. People don't know that, but there's a, you know, they do need to coexist. So yeah, those are all the things I teach. And I, you know, I'm new to teaching. After 2 years, I'm still going to say I'm new to teaching. So I will, you know, expand on that as I get stronger. But I do definitely promote staying in your lane as a professor, and being very honest about what you can and cannot do.
I think that when you get artists who are like used to working in 3D into 2D, you get really interesting projects. And when you get artists who are in 3D who are used to working in 2D, you also get really interesting approaches where, like, you know, if you're just working with artists who only work in one medium, they might say, well, you don't do things that way here. Uh, but sometimes it's worth asking why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Jason,
been a studio-wide. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. Let's move to Jason before I dominate the conversation. So many opinions.
yeah,
Go ahead.
we'll get back to you very soon, I think. Jason, how do you describe the kind of classes that you teach?
So it's a mix of technical and creative. More so on the creative, because I teach both second and third years over at Seneca as well as Sheridan. And so the creative side of things is just learning the general foundations of animation, right? And then applying those things into using Harmony, rigging tools, and basically the whole kit and caboodle of like timelines and everything, and not so much focusing on just drawing out all your work, but to find creative ways to streamline it through rigs and so forth, right? And I get, because I've, like, my trade is technical director, I get a lot of questions of like the computer science side of things, basic coding and how we can implement it. And it's always neat to hear like artists wanting to dive into that side. Like I didn't naturally start off as a TD. I was a hand-drawn animator like everyone else graduating from art school. It just naturally happened that way over time. But that's a whole different discussion. Back to where I teach is just more of the foundations of both Harmony and hand-drawn animation.
Yeah, I think like technical director is one of those roles too that like a lot of people who are students don't really realize is like a possible pathway into the industry for them. Because for a lot of animation, school teaches people, hey, you can be an animator, without realizing, hey, you could be a compositor, a rigging artist, technical director. There are a lot of different roles in the industry.
No, for sure. And like I wouldn't have known, like if you asked me 20 years ago, like would I see myself where I am today? Absolutely not, right? Because like I was totally focused, tunnel vision on I'm gonna draw, I'm gonna direct, and that's gonna be my career in my life. But then as I entered in and seeing through as an instructor, as a director, and just as a general artist, the possibilities are endless. And it's been an amazing journey for, I would say, most of us, or all of us, really, like seeing like basically how this art form has evolved with the tech.
And Tony, how do you describe the kind of classes that you teach?
Yeah, so Pixel Blue College is an 8-month program, so we have to really pack a lot in. And the first half of it is illustration. So, you know, I'm very thankful for that part because I come along during the animation part. And so Scott Carmichael, who is the illustration instructor there, is really great at covering theory and all that. So I'm very lucky I get to come in and bring like the studio perspective, the, you know, entrepreneur perspective. But, you know, everyone's point here, which is just like helping people gravitate toward the thing they're good at. Like, don't necessarily feel like everyone's going to come in with the same idea, right? Or with the same skill set. They don't know that when they come in necessarily. They might be these young people who have not really had a chance to see what this is all about. So I'm coming in and saying, all right, it's really important that you understand what the pipeline looks like in a studio situation, and that no two pipelines are exactly the same, right? I teach a layouts segment that is, one of the, I even put a quiz together this week. It was like, true or false, every studio treats layouts basically the same. And I got a few trues. I'm like, no, false. No two studios approach layouts the same way. Sometimes layouts is a TA position. It's just, setting up the file and letting somebody else take over from there. And depending on the production, that might be appropriate. So I have to I'm trying to give them all these different angles and saying like, look, you don't know what kind of production you're going to work on. So I'm going to show you layouts the way that most closely resembles how we would reflect a traditional pipeline, in that, look, we have a tool now, Toon Boom, that will let you see things from all these new perspectives that the original layout artists who were just focused on backgrounds and, mapping space for the characters. Now we get to think more about the camera and see how it feels with the characters and watch it. We're not doing pencil tests. We're actually building it right there in front of us. And I try to remind them that, like, how hard these teams worked and how many people and how long it took to do that. But also, like, in that context, this is how much time we have to learn this stuff. And I'm going to count on you to, continue exploring theory. Let's keep playing with the 12 principles, even if you're not sure why we're doing that. Like, try to incorporate that in just so you understand what it is and why it's there. So the theory is always like kind of built into what we do. But what I'm really trying to do when I come in, because I have a co-instructor that spends a lot of time with them in Canada, and then I'm online with them and coming in person, very much has to kind of concentrate everything he's taught them and what I want to help them understand, and just bring that perspective of, look, this is how it's going to feel when you're working in a studio or on a project that you're doing with a few other people or even by yourself for a client. And you're going to get these kind of notes. You're going to get these kind of reactions. It's okay. Your work is important, but sometimes your work has to take a back, or your preference, I should say, of work has to take a backseat to this. Find what's great about working on this in this style, or in this, kind of a genre, this type of a profession, because you're always going to have that opportunity to be creative. But to keep, like, the whole point is like, don't sit back and relax. Like, this is your chance. You have 8 months, make the best of this, right? Like, do everything you can, learn everything you can. If you find that you're good at rigging, let's explore that. Let's take you down that path a little bit and see what you can do with that. Maybe your style of animation that you've been trying that has worked out okay for you is not as rewarding as doing a cutout animation style or a hybrid. And just try it. Make sure that you have a chance to try it. So that's the whole, even sometimes when we get that, this isn't really my thing. Okay, but try it. You might find it's actually really exciting, and that you're able to do the same thing you were doing before, but faster. But the point is, again, come back around to it, is that, if you don't like the way rig animation looks, then you have to make rig animation. But it's not the rig's fault. It's we have to figure out how to make that better. So it's always about the possibilities, I guess.
With that in mind, Tony, have your students managed to make anything in the classroom that surprised you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what surprises me more than anything is just how much talent there is. I mean, I don't remember being able to draw that well when I was their age. A lot of these students are coming right out of high school. Some of them maybe a few years out. I wasn't as skilled as they are when I was that age. It took me a long time, and I look at the someone, I'm like, I can't. So I'm always surprised by how much talent is just buried right up underneath there. You just have to, you have to push. And those are the ones that really surprise me, are the ones that have that self-starter, that self-motivated. It's hard. I mean, I remember being young. I would have much rather, I'm going to go have a beer, whatever. Like the ones that show up early and are like, want to work on their own project until the instructor shows up or till the other students show up. And then they dive in. And then when get to the end of the day and everyone's kind of getting tired and then they're back on their own project. Those are the ones that I see going on and getting the jobs, getting some kind of, even if it's not that perfect job that they wanted, they're always the first ones that find work when they get out of school. And that's hard to expect of a young person. And I'm always surprised by when I see that. And I'm also surprised by where these students are coming from. I'm out in Alberta. A lot of my students are First Nations people that, they live on the res their whole life. They're not as exposed to these pop culture things as the typical student that I'm used to seeing. But they come out and they've been watching and they've been paying attention and they're drawing really well and they're so enthusiastic. And I'm just like, people are coming from every corner of the world that see things now that we were not exposed to, you would not have been exposed to 20 years ago. So like when, you talk about what the internet has done right and what it's done wrong, this is definitely something that's done right.
Mhm.
But I'm also surprised that they don't know how to use a keyboard. Do you guys get this? Like a lot of students who have only animated on a tablet and then you're like, keep one hand on the keyboard, keep one hand on the keyboard. Yeah.
Yep. Like I have students
That's really interesting.
Yeah, because I have students that don't know how to use copy, paste, and cut on the keyboard shortcuts. The most general thing that you can ever know about any Windows or even Apple system, right? But yeah,
I feel like it's not an undo.
Because we're old.
Hey, look,
Greg, have your students managed to do anything that surprised you?
Who was that? To me?
Yeah. Have your students managed to do anything in the classroom that surprised you?
Surprised me? Well, yeah. I think if you're paying attention, you're always going to be surprised, for sure. Like, I mean, that's part of the deal with teaching, right? Like, you're discovering a lot together. I think is really what it comes down to. And I was approached teaching like I learned pretty early on that like a student asked me, "Is this the right way to do this? Is this the right way to do this?" And I was like, you know what? There's not a right way to do this. There's not a wrong way to do this. There's really like, what is it you want to achieve, and what's the best way to get there? And I think once you sort of unlock that for a student, then it's all about experimentation and discovery. And then like once you start like you apply that to the tools we're using. Like I remember the first time I had a student that like this is super technical, but like in Harmony, there's like the curve deformers, right? And you're never supposed to animate the drawing off of the origin of the curve deformer because it'll be weird stuff. But the student, he did a snake slithering. He drew an S curve with the curve, and then he moved the drawing across the deformer. What happened? He did that, and I never saw it before. And I was like, "You just taught me something," And so I was like, "That's the kind of stuff that when you get like whatever 15, 20 open minds in a room together and you give them a tool set and you say, this is what it'll do. Now go do something for yourself with it. You're going to get the most amazing results. And I think that's just like, if you can set up that environment, then everybody can learn from everybody else. And I'm learning. And then like, there's a lot going on. So yeah, I think it's just like, be open to surprises and embrace the surprises. If you're a creative person, especially if you're a teacher, going off script is kind of the best thing that can happen to me in a way. That's like you prepare and you want to be ready, but like the happy accidents are the ones that are like that's spontaneous. That's what's actually real, and that's what you want to like encourage and embrace that stuff. So yeah, it's every day is surprising. I love it.
I love the answer that you gave at the beginning of students asking you advice, and you have to ask back like, what are you trying to achieve? Because I think like one of the pitfalls with advice is that like you can get it. The advice that doesn't work is the advice that isn't really for you. Like all of the kids who were, drawing anime characters and the prof saying, no, don't do that, you're not going to get hired. And then the industry kind of transitioned towards that, it's like, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I think it's like some students want to be told, want to be given directions, want to follow the recipe and the formula, which gets you only so far. Because like if you're seeking direction and you don't get good direction, you're kind of lost, right? But if you're empowered to like, well, I know what I want to do and I can try A, B, C, D to get there, then you sort of are in charge of your own destiny in a way. And I think that's going to be much more rewarding for you as the individual, the student or whatever. And then also like on a career path, you're not going to be needing approval or encouragement or praised to do what you want to do. You can just kind of like do your thing, and you'd be a little more independent that way. So yeah, I just felt like that was best for everybody if we kind of took that approach to empower students to kind of like determine. The hard thing at that point is like determining what it is they want to say. Sometimes that's the challenge. Maybe the execution isn't always as hard, but like, you know, narrowing down what is your intention, and then like it all goes from there.
Yeah. Sonia, have your students managed to make anything in the classroom that surprised you?
Yeah, I was just going through it in my mind while we're talking, going, yeah. So, I mean, I've been producing film and series for a while and for a long time. And, you know, we introduced rigs in studio a long time ago, and 3D and 2D. So for I do a studio project class where the goal is to kind of simulate a studio environment and try to make a film. And I went in with the expectations that I have from studio life, where, you know, it's going to be probably like 20 seconds a week you're going to achieve. And we're going to, because I wanted to take it back to hand drawn, and we haven't even tackled that for a long time in studio in Toronto. So I wanted to let them know about the kind of low expectations I had for, you know, and I wanted them to have, you know, a realistic goal so they wouldn't be disappointed. And they literally they not just drew and cleaned and in between and did their own trace backs, like all the things on their own. Did a whole film in like 8 weeks. And then I had one student who, because we weren't going to finish in time, she decided to draw out all the remaining scenes on her own, animate them, clean them, paint them. And I was like, say what? Like, because you know, in studio, when you're producing, sometimes week after week, you're looking at kind of the same scenes over and over. Like, yeah, just a tweak here, but this was stuff that was just good the first time, all drawn by hand, like in traditional, with like full rotating monsters, and you know, it was like a
That
monster
doesn't happen.
anime theme with some character. I was like, what? I was really blown away. The film looks great. They're gonna, you know, for kind of finishing up this semester, and hopefully we'll see it at a festival or two. But really, I couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't even know that was possible anymore. So, yeah.
Jason, have your students managed to make anything in the classroom that surprised you?
Yes, because again, we have this project where we give them 5 days to do a 30-second short. And what they come out of that, it's basically a 24-hour challenge we all know about, right?
Yeah.
But expanded out to 5 days. And we randomize the teams. We go to it. And the things they produce just blows my mind, like what they can do in 5 days. And with like basically like given what direction we've given all the things that they need to learn how to do the things they need to do, and where they take it is just amazing. Because again, it's like there's not a veteran director on there or a lead or supervisor like we would have in production. It's a bunch of juniors. These guys are completely like just new at this, and where they take it and where their ideas, and it's so motivating and so inspiring to see like them going at it and coming up with and producing the most amazing 30 seconds with really like it's all them, right? So yeah, definitely.
You feel like a proud dad when that happens.
You do. You honestly do feel like a proud parent after like seeing all that, because it's amazing like how much they've actually absorbed, right? And what they were able to take from what you told them, even though it's like I have about 20 kids, right? Students, they teach 2025. And you don't, and like when you teach it and during lecture, you don't think that they absorbed anything, right? It just goes right over their heads. But like when put to the test, it really shows, right? And it's really inspiring to see.
Wow.
Jason, is there anything that you want students to take from your classes before they join productions aside from technical skills?
Yes. Check your ego aside. Basically, the toes that you step on going up the ladder are the same ones that you're going to see coming back down, right? And that if anything, that's the one thing I do teach them is just, you know what, like be a person, right? And there's no room for being a total ass, right? Or anything.
Tony, is there anything that you want students to take from your classes before they join productions aside from the technical skills?
What I want them to take away is what I call B Buck. Buck is my co-instructor, and he is that like model animator who just loves it so much that it has become his life. And this is like we've all grew up knowing these guys that just, what are you going to do when you get home from work? I'm going to animate some more. Like, they just don't want to stop. They're constantly going. And that's the thing, like, you have to keep creating. You can't just, you can treat it like a job. And if you've got just that natural gift of being able to work fast and create beautiful art, maybe that you could, but usually those are the ones that want to keep working into the evening and everything. You shouldn't have to just, blast your brain out doing the same thing over and over again. But it really is up to you to, to keep pushing that, your capabilities and discover what you can do, and then, go build it. Don't talk about it. Don't wait to get hired by a company before you start doing the animation. You should be doing it now and keep learning new things. There's always going to be another tool. There's always going to be another approach. The more you learn, there's no way. That's the one thing I always have to remind them about myself. It's like, I still have to teach myself things. I still have to go learn new things constantly. If I thought I could get away with just coasting on what I already know, I would be done. And that's one of the sad things I remember about those early days of digital animation, is those guys who were like, I want to stick with the pencil and paper. And they were good. They were really good, way better than me. I felt guilty, like, hiring, like, me being their boss. Like, I'm like, you should be my boss. Like, you're so good. But they didn't really, I don't know if they didn't believe computers were going to work, or they didn't believe in themselves to be able to adapt to computers. But you can't let yourself get into that situation. I always make sure that it's up to you to learn the tools. It's up to you to go out there. People aren't calling you back about jobs or whatever. That doesn't mean you sit around. You should be working on your own thing. You should be building something that is yours, because that's going to be your calling card. That's going to be what gets you the job or gets you the opportunity to create your own stuff.
Well said. Greg, is there anything that you want students to take away from your classes before they join productions aside from the technical skills?
Yeah, I mean, backing up what Jason and Tony said, I think one thing I would tell students is animation community is a small world. You'll be working, look around the room, you'll be working with these people for the rest of your careers. And and believe me, then some of them graduated and ended up working with me in studios. And it's like, see, I told you. But so there's that. I mean, just be aware that you want to be, like, we're all in this together, right? Like, you want to succeed, but you don't want to, at somebody else's expense, because, you're going to be, what comes around goes around. So that's the one thing. I think the other thing that I would do towards, like, the seniors, the end of the quarter, be like, okay, let's get real. I'll be candid with you, ask me anything, and just sort of like, you can learn to animate. You don't have to go to school to learn to animate. There's tutorials and books or whatever. But, like, I think the thing that I feel like, even on the college level, animation used to be like a true apprenticeship. Like, it used to be, like, before my time, it was like, but it was like a lifelong thing where you had to pick it up, right? It was like truly an apprenticeship thing. And I think, like, the mentoring is important. I think the human aspect is important. So I try to impress upon them, like, the stuff they didn't learn in classes, of, like, the real world. How do you navigate a crew? How do you navigate studio dynamics? Like, how can you be a good coworker? How do you protect yourself? What are the boundaries that you should be putting up? Is it okay? Is it a badge of honor to pull an all-nighter as a student? Like, is that a badge of honor to do it at work? Like, those kind of questions. And, like, just to know that, like, you're in animation because you love it. And nobody loves animation as much as we do, especially when you go to work for a studio, because the people running the studios, to them, it's a business, and they didn't get into animation the same reasons you did. So, like, those are the kind of things that I want to leave them with, and not to diminish any dreams or aspirations, but to just show there's a reality side to it as well, to be ready, because it's part of the larger world, and that's
Yeah.
what I try to give them.
It's a job. It is work, and you should be able to treat it like one too. Sonia, is there anything that you want students to take from your classes before they join productions aside from technical skills?
Yeah, I think similarly to everybody else, it's the social aspect that goes along with animation. Sometimes I find, like, when I am in the classroom, everybody sits way at the back of the lab, as far away from me as possible, and they don't want to talk to me, and I can't express enough. Like, I'm also an introvert, and I want them to know it's okay that you are, but you can't hide, and you're in an industry where you need to be seen. You need to, socialize, go to events, get to know people, get to know the industry. Also, that they're a part of a bigger picture. I think sometimes we work in these silos. So, I want them to know they're a part of a big film. They're not just designers and just storyboard people, that they need to think of everybody that's involved in the production and how what they're doing will impact other departments, studio owners, if they don't show up, if they don't deliver on time, that they will impact a lot of people. So, but yeah, and just this, I think the social side is so important, and just getting them to come out of their shells and attend things like this, anything where they can participate and speak to people, speak up, and it's okay to be shy, but get into it anyway.
Yeah.
I think the awareness of like the rest of the production pipeline is so important, because you have to realize that many steps, someone has to animate this.
Yeah. And I find storyboarding especially interesting, and it, not just in school, but in studio, where board artists, I say, you can draw anything you want. That's the fun of the pencil. And you can draw, 5 characters marching down a hill the entire way, but somebody's going to have to animate that. Or if you draw like really vague layouts, in the background, there's just nothing but a white card. It's like somebody has to interpret, like, what's behind there, what they're interacting with. So, especially for board artists, I'm like, you are literally the starting point, and really the success of the production starts from that part. So, yeah, I like to watch people just draw whatever they want, and that's going to be really bad later down the line. You'll see.
Okay, we're running out of time, so I just want to ask one more question, really fast, lightning round, 1 or 2 sentences. Sonia, how do you find that the skills you develop as an instructor influence your industry work?
I think the biggest thing for me, I've learned as a person who did a lot of hiring and producing, it's maybe for me, there are so many hidden diamonds that are young and might not have the best resume, might not have the best skills. So I'm trying to think how to remove that as a barrier when we're doing hiring in studios, instead of, looking at senior resumes and really great skill sets, and giving some young people an opportunity through introducing maybe minor testing or things like that. Because I'm finding in school, like, these crazy talented people that I know when I was hiring, I would never have looked at them. So that's taught me a lot.
That's so cool. Jason, how do you find the skills they develop as an instructor influence your industry work?
Better communication, right? Being part of an instructor is being able to give out clear instructions, right? And especially with like the new generation, I find it way different in terms of just how they perceive things versus guys like us who are from an older generation, and how we explain things, and certain things like sarcasm or even analogies may not gel the same way. So communication, definitely for me.
Right? Does anyone get Simpsons references anymore?
Only from seasons 1 through 8.
Plenty of SpongeBob.
Tony, how do you find that the skills that you develop as instructor influence your own industry work?
In a few ways. I mean, I think, that first thing that you have to do when you become an instructor is get over imposter syndrome and realize that no matter how talented they are, you have something you can bring to help them with their skills. And that does apply also out in the professional world as well. And, the kind of the communication, as you were saying, the patience, the ability to improvise that you have to develop with students and kind of apply those needs. But more than anything, it's that, that reminder of what it felt like when you were just starting and you did this because you loved it. You were making, $7 an hour, and there's no way you could have survived if you didn't have 5 roommates. That it didn't matter because you were doing this thing that you love. You reminded that when you see them work and you see how they approach their work, and that reminds you to then it's okay. Like what Greg was saying earlier, like break the rules a little bit, go ahead. Like it's, we want to teach you all this structure, but it's what I know to be right now is not necessarily right in the grand sense, and certainly not in the future. So like I'm getting a little bit of a refresher in what people find actually interesting and exciting. And that's kind of cool. That's breathed a little life into my career, I think.
Yeah. Greg, how do you find that your instructor skills influence your industry work?
I think sum it up, really, it's teaching is a support role, a supporting position. And I think after becoming a teacher and then getting back into industry, I realized that supervising can also should be a support position, and not just delegating and laying out expectations and then looking for the results. It's really it's my job is to empower and whoever I'm directing to give them the tools and whatever the resources they need to succeed. And whether that's playing to their strengths or helping them level up, something they're challenged with, but trying to figure out like how can we level them up without the production taking a hit, like that kind of thing. But it's really, I think what's made me better at just the interpersonal aspect of it, and that like I'm really dealing with other people. I'm not really managing tasks. I'm managing the people who are responsible for executing the tasks successfully. And I think that shift in perspective has really helped me in industry work.
All right. My very last question, Greg, where can our audience follow you to see more of your work?
Probably the best place, I have a website, and my full name isn't on this thing, but yeah, GregaRaya, all one word, GregaRaya.com. I've got a website, and from there you can find me everywhere else.
Sonia, how can our audience follow you and see more of your work?
I put my name here, theanimationlounge.com. You can just see some of the fun workshops that we do and some upcoming events, and then just LinkedIn to see my kind of everywhere else that I am, including at Otis College.
And Jason, where can our audience go to follow you and see more of your work?
Mainly LinkedIn. I don't really have a site or anything. I like to stay off the radar, off the grid more than anything. But yeah, but if you want to know more about like what I do, what I've worked on, LinkedIn and IMDb.
Yeah.
And Tony, where can our audience follow you to see more of your work?
I think probably if there was only one place, LinkedIn would probably be it. You can always look me up on Vimeo. There's always going to be something fresh up there. But yeah, if it's interesting, if it's worth sharing, I'll generally share it on LinkedIn or on Instagram. So just look me up by my name. I'll come up.
All right. Well, thank you, Greg, Sonia, Tony, and Jason for taking time to discuss your work teaching animation. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. For anyone interested in making the jump from animation school to studio work, I would encourage you to take a look at our instructor-led training courses. From foundation courses for Storyboard Pro and Harmony to focus training on rigging, compositing, and animation. It's a great resource if you don't already have a lot of experience in the software. The website is toonboom.com/training. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time.